Welcome back to Wake Up America. I'm Christina Thompson. Let's take a quick look at some business headlines ahead of the new trading week. Markets looking to rebound after a down day on Friday. The Dow Jones giving up more than 532 points. For more on the week ahead, let's bring in our money experts, business and market analyst and Newsmax contributor Seth Denson, and Vice President of the Commonwealth Foundation and fellow at Independent Women's Forum, Jennifer Stefano. Welcome back, you guys.
Thank you.
So I want to talk about YouTube right now because that TV subscriber, it just lost access to a number of key channels like ESPN and FX. We know that the agreement that they had with Walt Disney Programming expired this weekend. And now the two streaming giants are at odds with each other. So Seth, do you think that YouTube has a future without these major networks?
Yes and no. I mean, the benefit that YouTube has is that they're owned by Google, whose stock is up 65% year to date. Quite frankly, is twice the size of Disney, who owns and controls ESPN and Hulu, which is YouTube TV's biggest competitor. The question that Google will have to decide is YouTube TV worth it? YouTube certainly is. It accounts for 10% of their revenue. But YouTube TV, if they lose these networks, they could lose subscribers and Google could scrap the whole thing. 20% of Americans are getting access to cable information through one of these types of services, streaming services now. So it's a big market, but there is competition.
I mean, yeah, losing these shows, I think that they lost The Bachelor in this deal. They lost a number of different, sporting events that are going to take place. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens coming out of this. I know that a lot of us watch YouTube, and another thing that a lot of us love is the Olive Garden breadsticks. So let's turn now to Olive Garden because the parent company, Darden Restaurants, is now saying goodbye to a chief executive, Gene Lee, who's been pretty much just at the forefront of the pandemic for the restaurant. He's really helped to kind of make sure that their sales continued even under the pandemic, but Lee is now planning to retire in May. Jennifer, the restaurant chain, an obvious favorite across the country, is now a good time to shake things up with their executive leadership?
Well, I think what they're facing is increased food costs that they see are only going to continue to rise as inflation does, particularly if the supply chain issues persist, because that is impacting our food supply chain. Now, what the new executive leadership team has to decide is what is the brand for Olive Garden going to be moving forward? It was always this all-you-can-eat endless buffet or endless refills, and that's going to be problematic to change that. You really are going to be impacting consumer behavior and how they relate to your brand. So you probably do need new management to navigate you through what is going to be a very, very tricky brand rebuild if you're going to end that part of the endless pasta bowls and endless refills.
I mean, right, lots of changes coming. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Now let's turn to Sears. They're planning on selling their suburban Chicago campus. The retailer has been struggling and, they've called that corporate headquarters home for 30 years. Seth, the parent company Transformico has been downsizing for years. Do we think that this is the end of that major retailer sales, Sears?
Christina, I certainly hope not. As a child, we're going to the holiday season, right? And as a kid, I remember getting the Sears catalog and thumbing through it and getting to pick and circle toys that I hoped Santa might bring me. And then as a kid going and riding on the riding lawnmowers with my dad and in the store. I mean, this was iconic America, and I hate to see what's happening. But the reality is Sears, much like other companies like Blockbuster and some others that have gone by the wayside, they haven't kept with the times. They haven't kept innovating. Their share price at its high at one time was $130. It's now 2 cents a share. And so, yeah, I fear that this is the end of the company. But my hope is much like Toys R Us, somebody will come in, buy it up, and bring its brand back to glory once again.
I hope so, too. I mean, I, too, loved getting the Sears catalog. I, too, loved going to Blockbuster and choosing movies. And it is a shame when you see these businesses not able to kind of keep up with the changes. Let's turn now to Starbucks, who's been accused of using a unique campaign to intimidate their workers against forming a union. Jennifer, employees said to be subjected to, quote, overwhelming psychological force intended to hurt morale. Is that something that you think is happening, and is that even legal?
I think that's something the unions say is happening. Look, Starbucks was progressive before its time in terms of the benefits that it offered to employees. So it's very interesting that they are now targeting, the unions are targeting Starbucks. I think the unions are trying to find a foothold in a new and modern economy where employers are getting incredibly competitive in offering benefits and higher wages to workers. I think it's a workers' market and they can make demands and likely get them. But Starbucks was always ahead of the curve on this. I think this is a he said, she said scenario. We really don't know what's happening on the ground. But what I do know is corporate compliance and corporate lawyers are very serious when it comes to the unions. And I'd be very surprised to see on the corporate side misbehavior, especially with the Biden administration, which is so biased towards the unions. They don't want any rulings unnecessarily against them, the corporations.
Yeah, this is a story that we will keep watching to see kind of what comes out of that. But Seth, Jennifer, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much
for having us.
After the break, we will be talking all things Christmas at the White House. You're watching Wake Up America only on Newsmax. We'll be right back.